Happy Monday. Make sure, okay, yeah, we're good. We're good. Only on a Monday. Happy Monday morning. Thank you for joining us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. That's Carlene Bragg. Adjusting the camera. Also, manning the wheels of steel right there. You know, you do a great job here on the show. Of course. It's Monday, Carlene. Start of the week. You got to bring the energy.
We're bringing the energy.
We're bringing the energy. I always try.
We're adjusting on the fly. We're bringing it.
That's a lot. Look, I always say this. It's a lot that goes on in the morning. Like news never sleeps.
Right.
And that's the reason why. Look, you have WCNC Plus. Turn on Live Impact News. And it's all there for you.
Yeah.
Well, you don't need to go anywhere else.
It's in the background while you're making coffee, fixing some breakfast.
And if something piques your interest, just just do one of these. Okay. All right. So yeah, look, we have a lot going on. I don't want to waste your time. I like to get the energy up and going as you start your day, or you may be in your first meeting or getting out of your first meeting. Who knows? Okay. So all right. So look. President Trump is, of course, in the news this morning, one, because several new polls came out. Also, he was at the Pope's funeral mass over the weekend talking with Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky. So a lot of things surrounding that, but happening this morning is actually underway right now. A White House briefing is taking place. It's happening live, but we wanted to start it from the very beginning in case you missed it. So let's get you out to that White House briefing now.
Good morning, everybody. How are you? Good to see you bright and early on this Monday morning. As you know, this week marks the first 100 days of the Trump presidency, and President Trump's first 100 days have undoubtedly been the most monumental and historic of any administration in American history. President Trump has already delivered on hundreds of promises he made to the American people, and we will continue to talk about all of them throughout this week. Tomorrow, I will host a press briefing at this same time, bright and early again, to highlight the Trump administration's economic accomplishments with our Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. And tomorrow night, President Trump will travel to Michigan to discuss all that he has achieved on behalf of the American people. On Wednesday, the president will host an open press cabinet meeting where each cabinet member will discuss their success thus far and their plans for the future. Today, we kick off 100-day week with a focus on the president's historic effort to secure our southern border. Later this afternoon, President Trump will sign an executive order on law and order and another executive order on sanctuary cities. The first EO will strengthen and unleash America's law enforcement to pursue criminals and protect innocent citizens. The second EO is centered around protecting American communities from criminal aliens, and it will direct the Attorney General and Secretary of Homeland Security to publish a list of state and local jurisdictions that obstruct the enforcement of federal immigration laws. After these are signed, the president will have signed more than 140 executive orders already, rapidly approaching the total number signed by the Biden administration over the course of 4 years in office. Speaking of Joe Biden, it was his awful open border policies that recklessly allowed more than 10 million illegal aliens to invade the United States over the past 4 years. Innocent Americans like Laken Riley, Jocelyn Nungray, Rachel Morin, and so many others were viciously murdered at the hands of these illegal aliens as a result of Biden's dereliction of duty. That's why one of President Trump's central campaign promises was to secure the border and end this invasion. In just under 100 days, 99 now to be exact, the president has overwhelmingly delivered on that promise. America's borders are now secure because of President Trump. He has restored the rule of law, enforced our immigration laws, and defended America's sovereignty. The president immediately declared a national emergency on the southern border, deployed the U.S. military and Border Patrol to repel the invasion, and ended reckless catch-and-release policies. The results have been nothing short of extraordinary. Between President Trump's inauguration and April 1 of this month, only 9 illegal aliens were released into the United States, a staggering 99.99% decrease from the more than 184,000 illegal aliens who were released into the country under Biden during the same period last year. The number of unaccompanied illegal alien children arriving at the border has also hit a record low. Total attempted illegal crossings at the southwest border hit a record low in February, only to fall to another new record low again last month in March. Just listen to these incredible numbers. In March 2024, under Joe Biden, Border Patrol encountered approximately 140,000 illegal aliens at the southwest border. 1 year later, in March 2025, under President Trump, Border Patrol encountered just over 7,000 illegal aliens at the southwest border. That's another 95% decrease from the prior year. The first piece of legislation President Trump signed into law was the Laken Riley Act, which requires illegal aliens arrested or charged with theft or violence to be detained. President Trump also reestablished the successful Remain in Mexico policy from his first term to ensure that aliens who arrive at our southern border and claim asylum are returned to Mexico to await their hearings instead of being allowed into our country while they wait. The president has also restarted construction of his signature advanced border wall. More than 85 miles of new border barrier are already in various stages of construction and planning. And Border Patrol, in collaboration with the Department of Defense and the great state of Texas, have deployed 75 additional miles of temporary barriers across the southern border. The Trump administration, as you know, has also ended the disastrous CBP-1 app, which Joe Biden exploited to facilitate the migration of nearly 1 million illegal aliens into the country. The Department of Homeland Security has relaunched this as the CBP Home app to provide illegal aliens in the U.S. a straightforward way to declare their intent to voluntarily depart. For years, Joe Biden's weakness in open border policies allowed vicious cartels to functionally control, through a campaign of terror, rape, and brutal force, nearly all illegal traffic across the southern border. President Trump has put a stop to this in record time. He designated these heinous cartels as foreign terrorist organizations and invoked the Alien Enemies Act to immediately apprehend, detain, and remove these massive threats who have flooded our country with deadly drugs, violent criminals, and vicious gangs. The Trump administration is working 24/7 to successfully arrest and deport these illegal criminals and foreign terrorists from our communities. We are in the beginning stages of carrying out the largest deportation campaign in American history. Over this past weekend, it was announced that through Operation Tidal Wave, a joint effort between ICE Miami and Florida law enforcement agencies, nearly 800 illegal aliens were arrested during the first 4 days alone. Among those arrested were a Colombian murderer, alleged MS-13 and 18th Street gang members, and a Russian with a red notice for manslaughter. And on the other side of the country, in the early Sunday morning hours, DOJ and DHS together launched a joint raid of an illegal alien underground nightclub used by Tren de Aragua in Colorado Springs, Colorado. DHS took more than 100 illegal aliens into custody, and many drugs and weapons were also seized. Operation Tidal Wave is a preview of what is to come around this country. Large-scale operations that employ our state and local enforcement partners to get criminal illegal aliens off our streets. As always, President Trump and our entire administration are grateful for the courageous law enforcement officers who are putting their lives on the line every single day to protect their fellow Americans and to keep our country safe. After 4 years of being vilified and hamstrung by the Biden administration, heroic ICE and CBP officers finally have a president who has their backs and is allowing them to do the jobs they signed up to do. There's no person who can attest to that more than our incredible border czar here at the White House, Tom Homan, who has dedicated his professional career to protecting our country and enforcing the law. I will let Tom deliver some short remarks, and then we'll open it up for questions today. Thanks for being here, Tom.
Thank you. Just a few things. Look, I started in the Border Patrol in 1984. I've been at this for over 40 years. I worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. Every president ever worked for took border security seriously, because you can't have national security if you don't have strong border security. We got to know who's coming in, what's coming in, where's coming in, why it's coming in, right? Even President Obama and President Clinton took some steps to secure the border because they understood national security was important. Joe Biden was the first president in the history of this nation who came into office and unsecured the border on purpose. That's just a fact. We handed the Biden administration after President Trump's first.
Of El Salvador has made this quite clear. Kate.
Carolyn, can you tell us more about the meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky?
Flooded our country with deadly drugs, violent criminals, and vicious gangs. The Trump administration is working 24/7 to successfully arrest and deport these illegal criminals and foreign terrorists from our communities. We are in the beginning stages of carrying out the largest deportation campaign in American history. Over this past weekend, it was announced that through Operation Tidal Wave, a joint effort between ICE Miami and Florida law enforcement agencies, nearly 800 illegal aliens were arrested during the first 4 days alone. Among those arrested were a Colombian murderer, alleged MS-13 and 18th Street gang members, and a Russian with a red notice for manslaughter. And on the other side of the country, in the early Sunday morning hours, DOJ and DHS together launched a joint raid of an illegal alien underground nightclub used by Tren de Aragua in Colorado Springs, Colorado. DHS took more than 100 illegal aliens into custody, and many drugs and weapons were also seized. Operation Tidal Wave is a preview of what is to come around this country. Large-scale operations that employ our state and local enforcement partners to get criminal illegal aliens off our streets. As always, President Trump and our entire administration are grateful for the courageous law enforcement officers who are putting their lives on the line every single day to protect their fellow Americans and to keep our country safe. After 4 years of being vilified and hamstrung by the Biden administration, heroic ICE and CBP officers finally have a president who has their backs and is allowing them to do the jobs they signed up to do. There's no person who can attest to that more than our incredible border czar here at the White House, Tom Homan, who has dedicated his professional career to protecting our country and enforcing the law. I will let Tom deliver some short remarks, and then we'll open it up for questions today. Thanks for being here, Tom.
Thank you. Just a few things. Look, I started in the Border Patrol in 1984. I've been at this for over 40 years. I worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. Every president ever worked for took border security seriously, because you can't have national security if you don't have strong border security. We got to know who's coming in, what's coming in, where's coming in, why it's coming in, right? Even President Obama and President Clinton took some steps to secure the border because they understood national security was important. Joe Biden was the first president in the history of this nation who came in office and unsecured the border on purpose. That's just a fact. We handed the Biden administration after President Trump's first administration, we handed the Biden administration the most secure border in my lifetime, and he unsecured it on purpose. Now President Trump and this administration here, the success is unprecedented. We beat Trump's first administration on border success. Border numbers are historic low. Today, as I'm standing here, we are the most secure border in the history of this nation, and the numbers prove it. President Trump's policies are saving lives every day. There's been studies done that says 31% of women that make that journey through use of cartels get sexually assaulted. When President Trump has illegal immigration down 96%, when 96% less people are coming, how many women aren't being sexually assaulted by the cartels? How many children aren't dying making that journey? How many women and children aren't being sex trafficked into this nation? How many known suspected terrorists aren't making it into this country? How many pounds of fentanyl isn't getting into this country to kill young Americans? How many women and children aren't sex trafficked? Under Joe Biden, sex trafficking is up 600%. We had 4,000 aliens dying making that journey. We had 250,000 Americans dead from fentanyl that came across an open border. President Trump's policy saves lives every day. Even the border wall saves lives. The people want to hate on the border wall. Every place a border barrier has been built, illegal migration's declined, illegal drug flows decline. But you know what no one talks about? The border wall saves lives. Because the most vulnerable, the women and children, can't get over that wall, which means they're going to a place where there's not a wall. And what's waiting on them? The men and women of the United States Border Patrol who will take care of those humanitarian needs, the health needs right off the bat. We just went over the numbers. Now let me talk about a few numbers that are important to me. Under the Biden administration, we averaged over 11,000 many days, over 12,000, even some days 15,000 illegal entrants in the United States. 15,000. You know what the number was the last 24 hours? 178. 15,000 to 178. Unprecedented success. On an average day in the Biden administration, no one got.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. That is a White House briefing that is happening right now, but we wanted to go back to make sure, just in case she missed a good chunk of that this morning, because it started, what, at 8:30, Carlene?
Yeah, it started around 8:30.
Okay, so yeah, we wanted to play back. It's actually happening still live right now. So we'll get back to that in just a few, but we wanted to talk about an anniversary that's happening tomorrow. So tomorrow marks a year since 4 officers were killed during what became, one of the deadliest days in Charlotte law enforcement history. On that day, members of the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force, which included officers from multiple agencies, were serving a warrant at a home on Galway Drive over in East Charlotte when they were met with active gunfire from a suspect inside the house. 8 law enforcement officers were injured in this ambush. 3 task force officers, Deputy U.S. Marshal Thomas Weeks, North Carolina Department of Adult Correction investigators William Elliott and Samuel Pelosi were pronounced dead at the hospital shortly after the shooting. And then CMPD officer Joshua Iyer died later that night. That's according to CMPD. This is a look from the scene of that day. And we wanted to bring in our own Kaylin Hagwood, who was out there on the ground covering this story. It's hard to believe that's been a year. It just looked up and it's like, okay, we're at a year of this tragedy. What do you remember from that day? I want to ask you what do you remember, because a lot of times when we're covering these like tragic events, it's like a blur.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you remember from that day?
Well, I remember that I was on a different story.
Yeah.
I can't even remember what that story was, but it was something lighter, something, sometimes we have a little bit of a slower news day, and that just turned into a day that you just don't forget. We were figuring things out just like so much of the public and many of the officers as well, because this was all happening very fast and in real time. So, when we got the call that maybe something was taking place in East Charlotte, we started to travel in that direction. And then as we were traveling, we saw more and more law enforcement officers. It really was a chaotic scene. There were officers that were trying to get through and around traffic. This was around the time where I think students may have been getting ready to come home from school. So it had really locked up traffic in an otherwise very busy area. There were a lot of parents that were coming to us because at one point the traffic was at a standstill, and so we were in our big news truck, and so big news truck means information.
Right.
And people would kind of honk the horn and say, hey, do you know anything? And we truly didn't. So we were in real time trying to figure this out and figure out what was going on and try to get an understanding of what this chaos meant. And of course we do now know that it was a tragedy.
How close were you guys able to get to the scene? Because you were working with Kevin Warlaw, who's been doing this for many, many, many years as far as being in the news business. How close were you guys able to get to the scene?
Yeah, so whenever we were, it was a slow kind of a ride there, but whenever we were able to get to sort of a media staging area, and even before that area was set up, just sort of an area relatively close to the scene, we were close enough where we knew that there was a blocked road based off of the map, but you couldn't get right into that road. So later on, we would determine that that was a neighborhood in which where all this took place. So we certainly could not get into the neighborhood where this was taking place, but we were on one of the main roads kind of near where that neighborhood would have been. And to kind of explain how big of a scene this had become, if you imagine a neighborhood with so many side streets within the neighborhood, that's a big area in itself. But this had really expanded out to the point where even the side streets were impacted. And if I remember right, I even think part of the interstate may have been impacted at some point during this. And so we were there. We were concerned for our safety because as we were getting that information in real time, we had learned that some officers had been shot or they were down in some capacity. I don't know if we knew the way in which they had been attacked at that point. And at that point, we didn't know, because of the scope of the large sense of the scene, we didn't know where this suspect or suspects were. We didn't know if where we were, even being on a side street away from that initial location, was a safe location or if it was also dangerous. And so as we're out there, I remember seeing another reporter from a different station who had on a bulletproof vest, just because his team had sent him out unsure what to expect. And so that was sort of the mindset of us as reporting staff as we were out there, not knowing what we were getting into. And as we were out there during that time, to give you a sense of how close things were, there was I remember this big plume of smoke that had happened, and it smelled to me like it was some type of a gunpowder. I think there was, at some point, I think they did, I don't want to say it wrong, like they blew up part of the building or they kind of dismantled part of the building. That may have been what I was smelling, but there was just this big smell of smoke that you smelled, and you didn't understand quite why that was happening, and it just added to the chaos from the parents kind of asking what's going on, and like sort of the yelling, and everyone's like, what's happening, to the standstill traffic, to this sense that at any moment there could be some dangerous person in the area. It was a lot to take in.
What was going through your mind at the time? Because like, you want to, as a journalist, we want to get the facts. We want to be brave and cover the story. But there's like a part of us that are like, we're scared. Like, we don't know what's happening. Like, we know as much information sometimes as like the people on the street. So like, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, I think that I was very nervous, wanting to just be as safe as possible. But in the moment, you also have the adrenaline running, and you want to make sure that you're able to provide the service that we provide, which is to tell people what's going on. I do feel a responsibility to that mom or to that, random person who wants to walk up and say, hey, what's happening? Because as we talk about this being in a neighborhood, there are people who live in those houses in that neighborhood, and they were certainly turning to us wanting to know, am I safe? Are my children safe? I think at one point people thought that, did something happen at one of the schools, because we're in that kind of environment where it could be a mass shooting of some sort. So there was a lot of confusion, and I did the best I can, our team did, to try to bring a sense of understanding and clarity.
I know that was a long day. After that day ended, what were your feelings afterwards? Like, when you got home, the next day when you got into work, like, where was your mind at that time?
I remember getting home, and for days after that, my fan was on in my living room to keep cool, and I remember it reminding me of the helicopters that were over us, and I had to cut the fan off because it was giving me such anxiety. Or for days after that, really weeks after that, if there were multiple law enforcement officers that would be kind of going fast, getting anxiety and having a feeling like, oh, it's happening again. Because I will say, as journalists, sometimes we are aware of things that are happening before the public is aware of them happening, even without being notified that they're happening, just because we're in situations like this. And so we can tell, oh, there's something that's about to happen. Maybe we should reach out to law enforcement and learn more, as people are at home and they're comfortable and they don't have any perspective of that. So I think having that heightened sense of awareness that something could be happening was definitely something that I had to cope with.
How do you deal with those emotions? Like, how do you sort that out? How do you get through that? Or are you still working through that? Because that, I mean, again, like that PTSD, that trauma as journalists that we get, I mean, that's real. Like, we're not machines at all. Like, we feel whenever, our community is impacted. So how did you work through that?
For me personally, and again, I don't want to minimize the impacts of the greater situation and the what these families and certainly what the law enforcement officers went through on that day. Speaking specifically to journalists and any of the other, people who were responding to the incident, maybe they would feel similarly. It is traumatic to be in a situation like that. It can be scary. I'm sure some of the homeowners and people who were living there that witnessed what we witnessed would feel a little bit nervous and on edge, because that's not normal, right? For me personally, I did seek counseling. I think I had some kind of an acute type of PTSD. Talking about it now, it does, make me feel a little bit uncomfortable. That of course, I was prepared to talk about it, but I think when you bring it back up,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah,
oh, wow, you know, you're reminding yourself of what it was like. But you know, this is what we do. This is how we serve. And I'm happy that I could have been there to bring that story to people because people needed that information at that time. And it's a story that we're still telling today.
You did a great job reporting out there. Carlin, you got something?
I do. I remember, I mean, the day was a blur, kind of like you had said, but something I really remember about after it was, I think, the morning meeting after.
Yep.
We are so go, 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 go. You know, we're always on to the next thing. And Kaylin, who's always so calm, collected, and very poised, kind of took a moment in the meeting to just be like, hey, let's talk about this. Like, and I really appreciated that you did that because, again, we're so,
Yeah, no.
like, after this.
Like,
and
what's
And you
next?
kind of thankfully slowed things down. And we've talked about mental health. We've had an expert on here talk about mental health when it comes to our jobs or anything. We acknowledge we're not on the front lines, but what you did was great for our newsroom. And we needed that. So I thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. You know, I think that people think about journalists and they think we're just these super tough people and
Right.
who go out to all of these different scenes. And one of the most common questions I get, whether it's a school talk or if I'm meeting people in the community, is, you know, how do you go to scenes where, you know, someone has passed away and you're right there reporting on it as it's happening, or there's something, you know, a house fire or something terrible that's happening. And we do feel that. We feel the emotions of that. And sometimes we have to just press pause and check in on ourselves. And I think that, you know, with the desire of wanting to do good and wanting to tell people information about what's happening, which is so critical to our job, sometimes we have to just press pause and say, hey, is everybody okay? We did a really big thing yesterday, and a big thing in the way of we really pushed ourselves. Let's just check in and take a pause for a moment. And I'm glad that our team kind of took that little pause, and we were all very motivated to get back out there and serve the public
We were
in
better
the way
for
that
it.
we do.
So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and for the longest, I felt like I was a champion in my career. Like, you know, I'm desensitized. That was my answer. I'm desensitized to all this stuff. It doesn't bother me. And I think, like, maybe a couple of years ago, I had to take, like, inventory of my own mental health. I'm like, no, like, I don't feel okay.
It wears on you.
Yeah, it wears on you. And it's like, it's okay to not be the brave, the tough journalist that we are supposed to be. Like, I feel sad today. I don't like, I don't
and you
like,
can,
yeah.
and that's
yeah.
okay. Yeah.
So that, yeah, I remember that moment. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was, yeah, because I
It was a
think,
moment we all needed.
yeah, and I think everybody was kind of like, okay, all right, let's talk about what we're dealing with right now. Wow, yeah, Kaylin, thank you. Carly, you got anything else?
That's all I got.
Kaylin, thank you for stopping by Live Impact Studios. We're gonna have to have you come back on, talk to us again. But again, you do important work in our newsroom. You do an incredible job. You're an incredible journalist. And again, thank you for taking. I know this is tough to reflect back on such a tragic day for our city, but thank you.
Well, thank you for allowing me a little time, and have a great show.
Always welcome back on. All right, so coming up Tuesday, tomorrow, again, the 1-year anniversary of this tragedy, we will have a special 5:30 show, taking a look at that day, what has changed, questions we still have, and honoring those officers. Again, today we are doing streaming coverage on WCNC Plus, that special streaming coverage. So make sure you download WCNC Plus on your TV and watch for free. And again, I want to remind you that special on Tuesday right here on WCNC Plus and on WCNC Charlotte, 5:30, a special 5:30 show. All right, so over the weekend, we had a Tunnel to Towers climb at Bank of America Stadium. And the Tunnel to Towers Foundation is birthed out of the 9/11 tragedy. But of course, CMPD and the law enforcement community came together to honor the fallen officers from that ambush almost a year ago. And we heard from several people, including Chief Johnny Jennings. Let's listen into what he had to say on Saturday. On Sunday.
Thank you all for being here. Today we climb not just for fitness or challenge, but in memory of 4 heroes who gave the ultimate sacrifice on April 29, 2024. CMPD Officer Joshua Iyer, Deputy U.S. Marshal Thomas Weeks, North Carolina Department of Adult Corrections investigators William Elliott and Samuel Peloche. We gather as a department, as a community, and as a family to honor the sacrifices and continue their legacy. These brave men face danger head-on in service of others. Their courage will never be forgotten. Their names will live on through our stories, our service, and events like this one. The Tunnels to Tower climb is symbolic. It represents the uphill battles our officers face, the weight we carry when we lose one of our own, and the strength we find when we climb together. It's a tribute to resiliency, unity, and to love, for our fallen, for their families, and for this city. We're grateful to Tunnels to Towers Foundation and to David Nicole Tepper for making this tribute possible here at Bank of America Stadium, right here in the heart of our city. This past year has been one of the most difficult in our department's history, but through the heartbreak, Charlotte has stood beside us. Your love, your prayers, and your support has lifted us up when we've needed it the most. Our community showed up, not just in words, but in action. You reminded us that we were never alone. I've never been prouder to wear this badge or to serve this city. We are still healing, but we are also still moving forward. Many of the officers who were injured on that day have returned to duty. This is a true testament to their resiliency and strength and dedication. We've implemented wellness resources, supported one another, and recommitted ourselves to our mission. This event today isn't just about grief, it's about hope. It's about honoring the past and building a future where we can carry our fallen with us every single step. Today I ask each of you to climb with a purpose. Whether you're a fellow officer, a family member, or a community member, let every step you take be in honor of the 4 brave men that we lost. Let every breath remind you that we are still here, still fighting, still serving, and still climbing. To the families of our fallen, we will always remember, we will always honor. You are forever part of our CMPD family. To Tunnels to Towers Foundation, thank you for turning tragedy into legacy. And to our employees of CMPD, I'm proud of each and every one of you. Keep climbing and keep showing up. And this community, thank you for being our strength when we absolutely needed it the most. Thank you and God bless.
And again, that was Chief Jennings, CMPD Chief Jennings, over the weekend speaking regarding those fallen officers as we approach that anniversary, that 1-year anniversary tomorrow of the officer ambush in East Charlotte. All right, so we want to switch gears now. We want to take you to the Boston area where it is week 2 of testimony in the Karen Read murder trial that is underway right now. There was a half day on Friday. We had some testimony, more procedure things, and then the jurors went out
To the scene. Yes.
To where it happened. So today it looks like it will be another half day of testimony, and in the second half of the day the judge will attempt to resolve an issue pertaining to 2 crash expert witnesses from a firm connected to this case. But we want to get you now out to that trial that's happening. Again, it's underway. Testimony right now is underway. Let's listen in.
The extraction.
So how does that work?
The examiners here had done the extraction of the device, resulted in a large zip file, which is a container containing all of the files extracted from the phone. They uploaded it to Cellbright's secure portal, where I was able to download it and verify what the data was in the extraction.
When you received the download of the extraction for Jennifer McCabe's phone, was it a similar process for John O'Keefe's phone?
With John O'Keefe's phone, I actually received the data on a USB thumb drive through the mail.
And before we begin, can you summarize briefly the issue, what you were looking for, and what the scope was, as far as Jennifer McCabe's phone?
For Jennifer McCabe's phone, it was related to the internet search that occurred, or that allegedly occurred at 2:27:40.
Okay. And as part of your effort and analysis, did you put together a PowerPoint that would help educate us on how a timestamp works and what happened in this case regarding a search?
I did, yes.
And have you seen that PowerPoint recently?
I did, yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm handing you a binder that you take a look in. Do you know or do you recognize what's in that binder?
Yes, this is the PowerPoint presentation I created related to Jen's phone.
And with that presentation, do you have it downloaded on your computer?
I do, yes.
I'd like to introduce this as the next exhibit, please.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
You know, with the court's permission, I'd ask Mr. Whiffen to be able to use his computer to walk us through the PowerPoint and explain it to the jury.
No objection, Your Honor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Whiffen.
Okay.
May we begin, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Whiffen, if you would walk us through and explain the PowerPoint and explain this issue to the jury, what the question was and how you resolved it.
Of course. Okay. The query revolved around a database called browserstate.db. Browserstate stores information about Safari internet browser and about the tabs that the user has either had open or has open. Fundamentally, in this presentation, I wanted to include information from iOS 14 and earlier. iOS 14 is not the version of iOS that was on Jen McCabe's phone, but iOS 14 has an easier way to understand how this database works. And then I can move on to iOS 15, which was the device, or was the version installed on Jen McCabe's phone. And hopefully by that point it will be clearer how this information is being populated on the device.
Could you tell us what iOS means?
iOS is Apple's proprietary operating system available on iPhones.
Thank you.
Fundamentally, the browserstate.db tabs table is shown, hopefully I can show this on here, in the top here. The real database has many more fields, but these are the fields which are important for the demonstration, to just see the row ID, the timestamp that's recorded, the URL or the web address, and the title of the page. And the example at the side there, you can see there's the browser is open, but there is no tab actually in focus at this time.
Can I take us just a little bit back so we can put this in context?
Yes.
When you are doing internet searches on your phone and you hit Safari or Google or whatever search engine you're going to use, does it create a tab?
It doesn't create a tab just by opening the application, but there may be tabs already open in the background when you start the application, and then you can tell it to create further tabs.
So if I have a phone, can I have a number of different tabs on my phone at the same time if I search for different things throughout the day?
Correct. You can have hundreds of tabs open.
Do tabs stay open forever, or can you close them?
They stay open until you close them.
So if you look at your phone and you have a number of different tabs, and say, for example, I start with one tab, I'm looking for the local football score. Can I reuse that same tab for some other search, or do I have to use a new tab to start a new search?
You could use that tab for as long as you wanted, or create a new tab to do additional searches while maintaining the original tab in its current state.
And so what you're trying to demonstrate to the jury is identifying a time on one of these tabs where a particular search was made.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained as to form.
Could you explain this demonstration as it relates to tabs on these internet searches? What are we actually trying to learn?
So as I showed, there's a field in this table called timestamp. It's actually called last viewed timestamp. I wanted to prove or to demonstrate what that timestamp means, how that timestamp gets populated, and how it's relevant or irrelevant to a case.
So if I have one of many tabs open on my phone, each tab will have its own timestamp?
Correct.
And the URL, that's whatever I look up, what I search on the search engine?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow that. Is that what's looked at?
That's correct. The URL is the address of the page that's being viewed.
So if I have a tab open and I use it continuously, 3, 4, 5, 10 times, will the time stamp change?
No, it will not.
And is that what you're explaining to us now?
Correct. That's part of the demonstration and presentation.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay. So in this instance, at 10 a.m., which is shown in the top of the device there, we can see I visit firstpage.com as an example website. At that time, a row is created in the database that shows row ID 1 with the timestamp 10 a.m. when the page was opened. The URL and the title are relevant to the page that was visited, so firstpage.com. A minute later, excuse me, I now use the same tab to visit secondpage.com. What actually happens in the database at this point in time is the first record is updated with new information. So we continue to see row ID 1. We continue to see the timestamp that the tab was opened at 10 a.m. And we now see the URL and the title that are related to the secondpage.com website. So I've shown it here. The first one is red to show that's no longer a live record. It's been replaced by the new record that's underneath it in black. A minute later again, I can visit thirdpage.com. And at that point, the record's updated a further time. So we still see that it's row ID 1, because no new rows are being created. We're just simply updating the existing rows. So we still have row ID 1, we still have 10 a.m. as the timestamp, and we have the URL and the title that show thirdpage.com instead.
Mr. Whiffen, so in the URL column, there are 3 different searches?
Yes, this is 3 different pages that have been visited within the same tab.
And in the data, it has 3 timestamps, but they're all the same?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
This database is not monitoring web navigation events. It's purely monitoring the tab events. So when the tab's brought into focus or when the tab's created is the only timestamp that's relevant here.
Thank you.
From a non-forensic point of view, if I was looking at this database in a regular database viewing tool, all I would see is the black record at the bottom. I wouldn't see the other 2 records because they've been essentially overwritten by the third record. If I was to use a forensic tool, though, then I would see all of these records because the forensic tool is designed to find the older versions of these records that have been replaced. So again, from a forensic point of view, I would see all of these records, I would see all the different URLs, and I would see the same timestamp and the same row ID for all of them. This fundamentally changed in iOS 15, and I've tested this on multiple versions of iOS 15, 16, 17, and 18, including iOS 15.2.1, which is the same version of iOS installed on Jen McCabe's phone. In this case, the data is not written to the database immediately. So I've tried to show here that we have some in-memory variables, so essentially a short-term memory that the device knows exist, but aren't written to the database yet, so they're not written long-term. So in this case, if at 10 a.m. I go to firstpage.com, we see that the in-memory variable for timestamp URL and title are updated to show a 10 a.m. timestamp and the firstpage.com information. But you can see at the bottom, I still have the browser state tabs table, and nothing has been written to that database at this time.
So can I ask you a question about this browser state DB? What does that mean? What does that tell us?
The browser state.db is just the name of the database that Apple are using to monitor the tab activity on the device.
Will a cell phone have a number of different databases it will send information to, or is it all one database?
There are hundreds or thousands of databases, depending on what applications are installed on the device. Each database typically targets a different application or a different feature.
Can information, like information from a URL or a Google search or a Safari search, can it leave data on different databases, or does it always go to one database?
It can live on different databases, for sure.
Thank you.
So again, to continue this example, if I now go to secondpage.com a minute later, we can see that now the in-memory variable is updated. So the timestamp still remains 10 a.m., the same as it did previously on iOS 14, but the URL and the title are updated to reflect the current web page that's being viewed. Again, nothing has been written to the browser state database. I can go to thirdpage.com. Again, we see the in-memory variables for the URL and the title are updated, but the timestamp still remains the time that this tab was brought into focus or created, not the time that the navigational event occurred.
All right, so that is the Karen Read trial that's underway. It looks like that
Wouldn't
shot.
matter whether I was looking at this data using a
It might be back.
regular
Let's get
database
back to
tool
it.
or a forensic database tool. The only record that I will see is this particular record. There may be multiple versions of this record, but still would only show me this timestamp and this URL information, because this is the only information that was ever committed to the database. Okay, moving on from that, there was multiple databases or multiple data sources on Jen McCabe's phone that could be used to see what actually happened on the device.
So that is, so we were just on the Karen Read trial. Second week of that trial is underway. It looks like that shot is frozen. We'll get back to that at some point, but we want to take you back to the White House briefing that happened this morning. We started it from the very beginning, so we want to pick up where we left off. Thank you, Carlene. As we approach, today is 100 days of the Trump. Let's say this week. This week will mark 100 days of President Trump being in office for a second term. So let's get you back out to that White House briefing that happened earlier.
People we knew crossed the border because they're on video, drone traffic or sensor traffic. Crossed the border, weren't apprehended, weren't fingerprinted, weren't vetted. Average day under Joe Biden, more than 1,800 gotaways. Yesterday, 38. 38 too many? We'll get that to 0. But we went from 1,800 to 38. And finally, that was said earlier, under the first 100 days, or it was actually January 20th to April 1st, last year, 184,000 illegal aliens were released into the United States. Under this administration, 9. 4 of them were material witnesses in a criminal investigation. We need them here to testify in a serious criminal trial. 4 was extreme medical condition. We couldn't return them because they were in such bad shape. And 1 was a humanitarian issue. This is unprecedented success. The border secure. President Trump saving lives. President Trump has proven no one does this better than President Trump. There is no equal, it's not even close. So God bless the men and women of the Border Patrol. God bless the men and women of ICE who strap a gun to their hip every day, put on a Kevlar vest, to not only secure our border and protect our national security, but the ICE agents in the interior, they're removing public safety threats and national security threats every day. While you're all sleeping at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, there are men and women out there enforcing the law and making this country safe again. And we're going to keep doing it. It's full speed ahead. So I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom, and thanks for all your great efforts. We do want to open it up to questions. If you have border-related questions for Mr. Homan, and I'm also happy to take any non-border-related questions. I'm happy to take border questions too, but Tom is here offering his time, so we encourage you to ask him questions. We'll start with our new media seat today. As always, Rogan O'Hanley, former Hollywood entertainment lawyer, I didn't know that, Rogan, who got fed up with the far-left ideologies of California and now posts conservative political commentary online for his more than 7 million followers across all major platforms. He joins us today from the great state of Florida. Why don't you kick us off today, Rogan?
Thank you, Caroline. In Trump's first 99 days, we've seen a coordinated assault on the rule of law by radical judges who are thwarting his agenda with an unprecedented number of national injunctions. These judges are providing more due process to violent MS-13 and Tren de Aragua illegal aliens than they did for American citizens who peacefully protested on January 6th. As Stephen Miller has highlighted, it would be utterly ridiculous to have full trials and appeals for the more than 15 million illegal aliens that came across our border under Joe Biden. Many are now calling for Trump to circumvent these radical judges and consider suspending the writ of habeas corpus solely for these illegal aliens in accordance with the terms of Article 1, Section 9 of the United States Constitution, which explicitly allows for such a measure when there is a rebellion or invasion. There's strong precedent for this action, being that it was exercised by 3 of our greatest presidents, Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses S. Grant, and Democrats' favorite president of all time, FDR. All 3 of which are not only celebrated by historians, but are immortalized on our national currency with their faces on there. Furthermore, all 3 used it against American citizens, where in this instance we would only be using it against illegal aliens. I think almost every reasonable American would agree that 15 million illegal aliens coming across our border under Joe Biden counts as an invasion, especially since many, as you highlighted, are now robbing, assaulting, raping, and killing American citizens. Historic assaults on our republic require reciprocal action from our government. Can you please let us know if and when the Trump administration is planning to suspend the writ of habeas corpus to circumvent these radical judges who are infringing on his Article 2 powers and to start shipping out illegals en masse?
I have not heard such discussions take place, but I can assure you that the President and the entire administration are certainly open to all legal and constitutional remedies to ensure we can continue with the promise of deporting illegal criminals from our nation's borders. And I also agree with the premise of your question, which doesn't happen in this room often, but I do agree with yours. It is absurd that the previous administration was allowed to allow 15 million that we know about illegal aliens into this country with very little pushback from our judicial branch. But this president is trying to simply enforce our nation's immigration laws and is facing roadblock after roadblock. So we're complying with court orders, but as Tom Homan has said every day, we're going to continue to forge ahead with this mass deportation campaign, and the president is open to all remedies to do that. Thanks for being here today, Rogan.
If I can also answer your question, as far as the judges, look, we just arrested a judge, Pam Bondi, for impeding ICE enforcement removals. I said from day one, you don't have to support ICE's operations. You can support sanctuary cities if that's what you desire to do. Sanctuary cities can stand aside and watch ICE keep their community safe, because any public official, whether you're mayor, city councilman, or governor, their number one responsibility is protection of communities. And ICE has been clear, we're targeting public safety threats and national security threats. I can't believe there's any elected official, and especially a judge, that doesn't believe we should be doing that, and they should be helping us. But I said from day one, you can sit aside and watch, you can argue against us all you want and protest all you want, but when you cross that line, I've said this 1,000 times, when you cross that line to impediment or knowingly harboring, concealing an illegal alien from ICE, you will be prosecuted, judge or not. And as far as releasing so many people, you know why the Biden administration released millions of people in the United States? No one ever talks about it. I'll talk about it. Why did they release people into the interior of the United States and put them, rather than put them into an ice bed? Why not put them in an empty ice bed at $127 a night rather than in a hotel room at $500 a night? They did it on purpose, because when you put them in an ice detention bed, they get a hearing in 35 days. Court records show 9 out of 10 people claim asylum, get order removal, they're gone. But if you release them and put them in a hotel room at $500 a night, their hearings can be 5, 7, 9 years if you pull out all appeals. And what are they hoping for then? That another Democrat administration is in power. They can award an amnesty to millions. This is about selling this country off for future political power. That's what it was. The law clearly says if you arrive at our border without proper documentation, you shall be detained. Not maybe, not think about it, shall. And that's what President Trump's doing. Catch and release is over. That's what the law says, and that's what we've done.
Barry.
A question on Abrego Garcia, if I can. The president recently said when it comes to facilitating his release, he's leaving that up to his lawyer. So just to be clear, have there been any negotiations between the U.S. and El Salvador over his release or facilitating his release?
I will tell you what the president of El Salvador told all of you in the Oval Office. El Salvador does not intend to smuggle a designated foreign terrorist back into the United States. He is an El Salvadorian national. That is his home country. That is where he belongs. And the administration intends to comply with what President Bukele said of El Salvador. He does not intend to send that individual back.
So that's a no. There's been no talks.
What I have told you is that the president of El Salvador has made this quite clear. Kate.
Carolyn, can you tell us more about the meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky over the weekend? Did that meeting change anything? Did Trump leave that meeting thinking any differently about negotiations and next steps on this?
Look, the president talked about this after the meeting himself yesterday when he took questions from reporters on Air Force One. He thinks that he is increasingly frustrated with leaders of both countries. He wants to see a permanent ceasefire. I understand Vladimir Putin this morning offered a temporary ceasefire. The president has made it clear he wants to see a permanent ceasefire first to stop the killing, stop the bloodshed. And while he remains optimistic he can strike a deal, he's also being realistic as well. And both leaders need to come to the table to negotiate their way out of this. And I do think that the president meeting with President Zelensky shows that he is exuding a lot of effort and time into this because he wants to be a peacemaker president, which he was in his first term. He intends to do that again. And this is an incredibly difficult situation and conflict that President Trump inherited from President Biden, who allowed this war to start in the first place, but he's focused on solving this problem. Does anyone have border questions? Sure. Okay.
Thank you, Caroline. If border crossings are at a record low, why should it still be considered an emergency?
It's because of what has happened on the last administration. We got to ensure that not 1 ounce of fentanyl comes across the border to kill Americans. The president has declared the cartels in Mexico a terrorist organization along with MS-13 TDA. They've killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined. It's an emergency till we shut it down. It's an emergency till the cartels are wiped off the face of this earth. President Trump's committed to saving every life. Now, I just mentioned gotaways, 38 yesterday. Who are the gotaways? Where do they come from?
All right, so that was a White House briefing from this morning. We mentioned at the top of the show there are several new polls out. So one poll that we're keeping our eye on most of these polls, but one poll in particular because close to home, the Winthrop poll. So here's a look at the poll. So a new Winthrop poll reveals a sharp divide among South Carolinians when it comes to President Trump's job performance. Now, according to the poll, 44% approve while 43% disapprove. And when it comes to hot button issues, a whopping 71% support stricter laws around transgender rights, including bathroom use and athletic competition. The poll also shows South Carolinians are deeply divided on the future of Confederate monuments, with nearly a third wanting to keep monuments exactly as they are, and whether the U.S. should be declared a Christian nation. So, okay, this morning, our team got a chance to speak with Scott Huffman, political science professor, political scientist from Winthrop University, to talk more about these new numbers and what we want to know as far as like the context around these numbers and these approval ratings. Let's listen in.
Here to talk about it all with us, Scott Huffman, political science professor at Winthrop University. Professor, thanks for waking up with us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, first up, want to go over the president's approval ratings we just mentioned. It seems about evenly split. 44 feeling positive, 43 not so much. Considering how heavily the state went for Donald Trump, do those numbers surprise you at all?
No, not really. If you take into account those who are not sure, who have no opinion, his approval rating is pushing 50% in the state. So it's overall 44%, but if you only include those who have an opinion, it's a little over 49%. So that makes sense. Now, among Republicans, obviously he's soaring sky high. Among Democrats, there's virtually no support for him whatsoever. Again, that points to a divided state, just like we have a divided nation. When the latest Pew poll came out, if you exclude those who have no opinion, he was at 40. So excluding those who have no opinion, he's about 9 points higher here in South Carolina.
As you said, it seems the country is very much divided. Part of your commentary with this poll is that it depends on which side holds the power, right? You feel positive if your side is in control, the opposite if it's not. It seems that, again, neither party trusts the other, with 81% of Republicans saying that Democrats are just too extreme, 82% of Democrats saying that about Republicans. Any surprises there at all to you?
No, I've been asking this question for the past several polls, including polls of the entire South. And what we're seeing is amazing polarization. So neither side trusts the other side to govern ethically and honestly, and both sides think the other side is too extreme. Now, if you add those two things together, it almost becomes a moral imperative to keep the other side from holding power. Additionally, we ask, are they good at getting their way? And here in South Carolina, we have a supermajority of Republicans in the legislature. The governor is a Republican, and yet a significant number of Republicans said, hey, the Democratic Party is good at getting its way. So they feel even if the other party is out of power, they're still a threat. And that would go both ways. So we are seeing massive amounts of polarization, and for the first time in a few decades, we're actually also seeing that reflected in Congress. 40 years ago, the Senate especially, but the House, our leaders weren't that very far apart, the public a little more so, but now we're seeing massive polarization, and that's not a good sign when it comes to getting things done.
Yeah, that lack of trust is
right.
Poisonous for our political discourse and trying to get anything done. Some of the strongest opinions in this poll came around transgender issues, and I thought this was interesting because a big number, 71%, favor or strongly favor laws or policies that require transgender athletes to compete on teams that match the sex they were assigned at birth. What's interesting to me is, though, also 62% strongly favor laws or policies that protect transgender individuals from discrimination when it comes to jobs, housing, and in public spaces like, say, restaurants or stores. Did that surprise you?
That surprised me a little bit. It makes sense. People in America think that others deserve basic rights. So no job discrimination, again, no discrimination in housing. So a majority of everybody and a strong plurality of Republicans, massive majority of Democrats, do not want overt discrimination. They do not want segregation for transgender folks. But when it comes to anything else, anything regarding health care, anything regarding playing on the team of the gender at your birth, especially using the bathroom of, your gender at birth, the public is just not in favor of those things. So we do see strong opinions against the movements of trans folks, but we do not see a desire for overt discrimination. I will note that it's significantly less than 1% of the population, roughly about 0.6% of the population who are transgender. So it's a fraction of a fraction, and this issue is definitely being used as a wedge issue that's far more ideological than it is a policy issue that affects everyday lives.
Think he said it best with just a fraction of a fraction. So much emphasis on it, and we're talking about such a small population. Let's talk about something else. DEI. Of course, there's been a lot of talk about this. The president is nearing his 100th day in office coming up tomorrow. One of the orders talking about DEI and the threat of possibly withholding federal funding for those institutions and organizations that continue with DEI. But in this poll, 39% are expressing some positive feelings toward DEI programs, 29% negative. Any surprises with that? 23% saying they're neutral, so no real strong opinion.
That was a little bit of a surprise until I realized about my own poll. This is the general population. These are not the most passionate partisans. It's not registered voters only. It's certainly not likely voters for any election that's going to be more than a year away. The general population, which includes moderates, a large number of African Americans, have no problem with DEI. You know, again, it's not a majority, but 10 more points. However, Republicans are strongly against it. So this is the president playing directly to his base, the people that got him elected. And we're seeing the same things in laws being passed in states. Here in South Carolina, anti-DE laws are being passed. They have passed the House. They're being pushed in the Senate. And that has a lot to do with gerrymandering. These legislators have to please the furthest right or the furthest left of their party, because those are the only voters who matter. A majority of both houses in South Carolina legislature did not have an opponent in the last election due to gerrymandering. So this is about conservatives playing to their base far more than it is about the general population.
Finally, a question that pollsters often like to ask is, it gives you a general sense of where we stand and the sentiment across the country. Are we on the right track? 47% think things in the nation are on the wrong track. Explain.
And again, you know, we're seeing people finally begin to feel the effects of tariffs. The news media and, you know, talking heads, I suppose like myself, have been talking about tariffs and what they're going to do for a while. But it's only now that the general public is beginning to feel it. You see when you buy something online, not Amazon, but online from other retailers, it flat out says the prices are higher due to tariffs. People are beginning to feel that. They feel that there's a lot of divisiveness going on in the country. So a plurality of people say we're headed in the wrong direction. That said, almost 70% of Republicans say we're on the right track. And that's because Donald Trump is doing what he said he was going to do with regard to those social culture warrior issues. Most people don't get in the weeds about the policies and trade in the election. It's about my identity and who supports people like me, and the Republicans feel Donald Trump is doing exactly that.
Scott Huffman, professor at Winthrop. The poll came out 6 a.m. this morning. We have you here on WCNC Plus at 8 a.m. We appreciate the quick turnaround.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Y'all were the first to hear about it.
There you go. We like to hear that.
Thank you so much.
All right, Professor, thanks as always. Talk soon.
And that's Professor Scott Huffman. Really good context on that poll from Winthrop. So speaking of President Trump, so President Trump's 100 days will be marked this week. So there's a news conference happening live right now talking about those first 100 days. And this includes participants from a committee to protect journalists, the ACLU, along with others. I just want to also mention that this is happening virtually. So again, this is a news conference from different organizations, including the ACLU, the Committee to Protect Journalists, and this is discussing the first 100 days of President Donald Trump's second term. Let's listen and let's take you there live.
And the first year to see average global temperatures exceed 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial. Despite this, the Trump administration has again announced a withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement and is using a so-called national energy emergency to increase oil and gas production in the US. The Department of the Interior has already used this emergency to justify drastically reduced permitting procedures that will fast-track the approval of fossil fuel projects, mining, and other natural resources. This fast-tracking will shorten processes that typically take 1 to 2 years to only a few weeks, further condensing the already limited consultation processes with communities impacted by fossil fuels, including indigenous peoples, and giving agencies far too little time to assess the environmental impacts of these projects. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is gutting many of the regulations and agencies that are needed to protect Americans' land, water, and soil. What the administration has called the Environmental Protection Agency's biggest deregulatory action, if fully implemented, will weaken key regulations on the fossil fuel industry, including toxic pollutant releases into air and water. The administration has already issued an official statement granting certain coal plants permission to bypass EPA regulations on toxic pollutants. Furthermore, an announced 65% cut to the EPA's budget will undermine the agency's ability to carry out essential monitoring and enforcement activities. It would also drastically reduce the money available to states for environmental programming. The EPA's decision to close its environmental justice offices and programming will also gut its ability to address environmental harms disproportionately concentrated with Black, poor, and minority communities, including elevated rates of and risks to maternal, reproductive, and newborn health, as well as cancer and respiratory ailments. At the same time, the administration's broader deregulation and funding cuts are giving corporations the world over more leeway to perpetrate human rights harms against the environment and workers. The administration's announced pause in enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, a statute that penalizes companies that pay bribes to foreign officials, will disadvantage American companies that choose to engage in ethical business practices. Cutting hundreds of millions of dollars funding for Department of Labor programs designed to tackle forced labor, child labor, and human trafficking in global supply chains only enables corporations that want to sell Americans goods linked to these abusive practices. All in all, the Trump administration's first 100 days have been marked by an assault on the global agreements, regulations, and agencies protecting Americans' right to a healthy environment. The effect of the administration's policies is to favor oil, gas, and coal companies at the expense of the urgent climate action and government regulation we need to protect American communities and people the world over from climate and environmental devastation. And I'm going to pass now to Hadar Harris from PEN America, who is Managing Director here in Washington, D.C. Thanks to everyone for being here today.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks to everyone for being here. In the first 100 days, the Trump administration has launched a frontal attack on free speech. In PEN America's review of the hundreds of executive orders and other actions taken already by the administration, and our analysis will be released tomorrow morning, we found a through line in this 100 days, a clear effort to chill and suppress free expression and freedom of speech. They're doing this by banning words, criminalizing ideas, restricting learning and teaching, and erasing history and identity. President Trump is doing this by creating opposite land. In one of his first executive orders, he proclaimed his support of free speech and his commitment to eliminating government censorship. But in nearly every step he's taken since then, he's done exactly the opposite. The Trump administration is literally banning words. Now, we all know that language evolves. Of course, the AP style book that you all use has changed over the years, but PEN America has identified a list of more than 350 words that this administration has banned in these 100 days. This includes woman, disabled, pollution, peanut allergy. You heard me, peanut allergy. These words have been stripped from government websites, are being flagged in government-funded research proposals, and are leading schools, civil society, and others to self-censor when using particular terms, like the word female. Restricting learning and teaching. On week 1, the Department of Education dropped 11 civil rights complaints about book banning. The administration called book banning a hoax. At the same time that they're dismissing the banning of books, the Trump administration is telling K-12 schools what to think through executive orders, again in opposite land, purportedly ending radical indoctrination. They're doing that, though, by creating clear curricular restrictions, eliminating what they call illegal DEI or gender concepts. They're interfering with university governance and trying to influence research and curriculum. What we see at PEN America is a campaign against the freedom to read, to write, and to learn. And all of this is part of a broader attack on free speech, which has led to the criminalizing of ideas. There is, and let me be clear here, a serious problem of anti-Semitism in this country, full stop. But this administration is cynically weaponizing anti-Semitism and DEI to shut down speech in multiple ways. They're attacking research, governance, curriculum, and even admissions and visas at universities. They're rounding up people, as we've already heard, for what they publish in a school newspaper or on social media or what they say at a protest. They're particularly targeting pro-Palestinian speech, as in the cases of Mahmoud Khalil or Rumeysa Ozturk, for whom we've also submitted amicus briefs. Even if student speech goes over a line, the universities need to be in charge, not the federal government. And finally, but not finally, the erasing of history and identity. The Trump administration has taken aim at cultural institutions like the Kennedy Center, or gutting or limiting grants through the National Endowments for the Arts or the Humanities. They've gutted the Institute of Museums and Library Services, which supports libraries and museums. And through executive order and action, they're even trying to rewrite history at the Smithsonian. Writers, journalists, educators, and academics will continue to lead the way. Words and ideas cannot be grounds for prosecution or persecution in America. PEN America has stood up throughout these attacks, and we will continue to do so, supporting the lawyers and rule of law who enable us to defend press freedom and free speech, standing up for education, both K through 12 and universities, defending freedom of the press and the right to report. Fundamentally, all of this is standing up for democracy. Courage is contagious, and we will all need more of it in the days to come. I now want to hand it over to Shannon Russell, the Federal Policy Counsel for the Center for Reproductive Rights.
Thank you, Hadar. On day 1 of the Trump administration, the Center for Reproductive Rights launched our Repro Red Flags Agency Watch initiative to connect the dots between key anti-rights officials and the harmful policies they enact. At the 100-day mark, we're raising the red flag. Your reproductive rights are in danger. President Trump has spent these first 100 days making it more dangerous to be pregnant in the United States, stacking every wing of his administration with anti-abortion extremists ready and willing to do his bidding. Individually, these officials have great power. Together, they'll do long-lasting damage to our democracy and threaten people's reproductive freedoms. For instance, Attorney General Pam Bondi's Department of Justice dismissed a case protecting emergency abortion care in hospitals, making it clear that the administration would rather pregnant people suffer and die instead of having necessary, life-saving abortion care. President Trump also pardoned 23 extremists convicted of violating an abortion clinic safety law, including those charged.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. Right there is a live look at a virtual press conference that's happening where journalists and ACLU talk about Trump's first 100 days within his second term. So we want to shift back over to Boston, where it's week 2 of testimony in the Karen Read murder trial. It got underway this morning. We brought a portion of that earlier this morning. It is happening. Did that shot freeze, by the way, Carlene? Looked like it might have. Okay. So can you kind of just give a little bit of context? Okay, so the shot went down. Do you mind giving us a little bit of context of like what you're hearing kind of catches up on this trial?
Sure. Right now it appears that the digital forensic experts kind of going over the browser history of one of the key witnesses. The reason it's important, it looks like it's January 29th, 2022, which I believe is right around the date of this happening. And it kind of goes through all of the browser history. And it's interesting because it says at a certain point, a second search were submitted for how long to die in the cold.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why they're bringing it up.
Yeah, really getting into the
Yes.
weeds of this case. So that shot keeps freezing. So we were trying to get you back there. We'll figure that out. But in the meantime, you want to let's go back to the ACLU press conference regarding Trump's first 100 days. Let's take a listen.
Indispensable role in holding governments accountable and protecting civil and human rights, including reproductive rights. Over the course of just 100 days, the Trump administration has made it clear that our bodily autonomy and our rights are in danger. For more than 30 years, the Center for Reproductive Rights has stood strong against attacks on reproductive freedom. We will not back down, not in the face of the president's intimidation campaign, and not ever. I'll now pass it to Mark Bromley, co-chair of the Council for Global Equality.
Thanks, Shannon. Good to see everyone this morning.
All right, so as promised, we are going to take you back now here to the Karen Read trial testimony is underway. Let's listen in.
If you were to create a tab, use it for 3 hours, and then close it, the timestamp would not be indicative. Also, if you were to bring an old tab into focus that you'd used several days earlier and then close that tab, again, you're going to get bad timestamp information. So ultimately, from Cellbright's point of view, we removed the timestamp from that data to avoid confusion in the future.
You shared with us that the URL for the 623 and 624 attempted searches ultimately was removed from the device.
Yes.
Would it be fair or accurate to say there were over 4,000 deleted files from the phone, or there was 4,000 deletions from the phone?
There were many.
Sustained.
Okay.
As to form.
Would it be accurate to say that the only deletion from that phone was that 623, 624 search?
No, there were thousands of records deleted, ultimately, for various reasons that I can follow.
That would be an inaccurate assertion?
To say that that's the only record that was deleted is inaccurate, yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm now going to turn to a second phone that you looked at.
Okay.
You told us that you looked at two phones. The second one was a phone that was, or is attributed to John O'Keefe?
Correct.
When you looked at the phone for John O'Keefe, were you looking at things different than we looked at on the phone attributed to Jen McCabe?
I wasn't as interested in internet data. I was more interested in location and health and anything else that could be useful.
Before we show any presentation, I want to get a little understanding of what you looked for and what you found. Were you looking for what's called location data?
I was, yes.
Was there a period of time that was important that you were looking for relative to location data?
Typically after midnight and before 6 a.m.
Is that on January 29, 2022?
It is, yes, sorry.
How does a phone, like an iPhone, store location data?
Multiple ways that it can be stored. Primarily, there's a database called cache.sqlite. And every time an application requests location data from the device, a feature called Location Services on iOS tries to calculate the device's location using a combination of technologies, GPS, Wi-Fi, cell tower, and Bluetooth. calculates the device's location and stores that into the database as a latitude, longitude, altitude, timestamp, accuracy, radius, information like that.
Are there different types of location data that are captured and stored on a device like an iPhone?
Can you define different types, please?
I'm sorry?
If you could define what you mean by different types.
The different sources of data that are generated that then captured on an iPhone.
Yes, so the application can specify how accurate it wants the data to be. So for example, if you're using a navigational application, you'd want high accuracy data. So the application accuracy data from location services would then try to use GPS primarily to get location information. Versus if you were using a weather app, for example, where you don't really need to know precise information, you just need to know the approximate town maybe that the user's at. So a weather application would ask for low accuracy information, and the device may be able to calculate the location based on cell tower information, for example. Both can be stored in the database with the accuracy information that's available.
Would a application that is devoted to navigation in your programming experience typically have stronger data, location data information than a more general application like a weather app?
Yes, for sure. And Apple actually specify in their documentation, when they specify the various different accuracy levels, they have one for navigational purposes for map applications.
How do you define accuracy level from the different data that's being stored in a phone?
How do you mean, sorry?
Is there high level, middle, low?
Yes, the information is typically provided with a range of meters. So you'll have a latitude, longitude coordinate and a number of meters that you have to draw around that locational point. And the device is somewhere within that circle. It could be as accurate as 2 or 5 meters. It could be as inaccurate as several miles, depending on the technology that was used to get the data.
Are you familiar with an application called Waze?
I am, yes.
Tell us what Waze is.
Waze is a navigational tool, so you can plot a route and it will try to direct you the best way, avoiding toll roads, avoiding accidents, that kind of thing.
What is the level of accuracy in location information that is generated by using Waze?
That would be the highest level of accuracy. So it would aim to get GPS quality information of around 5 meter accurate.
So why doesn't a programmer in every application just use the highest level location data for every application?
Getting GPS data is not always possible. If you're in a building, in a basement, for example, you may not get that. But also, it can be expensive to the device in terms of processing power, in terms of battery requirements. So if it can find location information cheaper by using Wi-Fi networks, for example, then it would prefer to do that. So just a lot less resource intensive than using GPS all the time.
In order to capture the highest level of location data, the most accurate in an application such as Waze, if somebody's using Waze and then turns it off, does it still continue to capture that highest level of accuracy?
Typically not. It may do for a short time, as it's still kind of working through a backlog. But fundamentally, if there's no application open that's trying to use location services, then the location information that's being requested and recorded is far more sporadic. It's typically background applications that may be requiring location data.
When you analyzed John O'Keefe's phone, in addition to the location data, did you also look into data known as health care data?
Yes.
And could you tell the jury how that works?
Yeah, so pretty much all iPhones for the last 10 years or so have Apple Health included. It monitors activity on the device, such as steps taken using various sensors inside the device, looking for motion which appears to be walking. It monitors altitude, so it knows whether you've gone up a flight of stairs, for example. It uses that information in concert with the the steps taken, so it knows the difference between going in an elevator versus walking a flight of stairs. And all that kind of information is available to you as a user to essentially see how far you walked each day and to monitor your own health.
When you look at healthcare data, you said it interprets it in different terms. One you used was steps. If I have an iPhone and I'm walking and it registers steps, can it tell what direction I went in?
No, it's purely just looking for motion of the gyroscopes, which appears to match the pattern that it expects of somebody who's walking. It doesn't know whether you're in a straight line, walking in zigzag circles, just number of steps.
What if I had my iPhone and I was moving the iPhone, but my feet weren't moving? Would it register?
It could register some, but typically it's relatively good at picking the difference between actually walking or throwing the phone around or shaking it.
The healthcare data, does it store with date and time?
So there's two locations that health data is stored. Primarily a database called HealthDB_secure. And that aggregates the information into periods of time. So you may have a 10-minute period where it says 100 steps were taken. Now, it could be that the 100 steps were taken in the first 2 minutes, and then virtually nothing was done for 8 minutes there. But there's another database called Cache Encrypted C, which is more granular. It's where the information is written originally prior to it being aggregated and moved into the bigger health database.
You also mentioned that the healthcare data has a term known as steps.
Yeah.
If the movement registers as steps, would that necessarily mean that a person was walking up or down steps?
Sorry, are we talking about steps taken or flights climbed?
I'm sorry, flights climbed.
A flight climbed, according to Apple, is essentially an incline of 3 meters over 16 steps taken. So it wouldn't really matter whether it was walking up a flight of stairs, walking up a steep inclined hill, on an escalator, something like that. If there is movement that appears to be walking and an incline of 3 meters, then that would be considered a flight climb event.
Is there any other ways that the phone could register flights climbed, but the person's not actually walking up or down stairs?
So I did test this a few months ago, driving in my vehicle. I was able to, if I just put a phone.
We're at the bottom of the hour, 10:31 to be exact. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant, and right now we're watching live as the second week of testimony is underway in the Karen Read trial. You're watching that right there live. On the top right is a live picture from Vatican City. Now, cardinals will gather for the papal conclave. Now, the centuries-old tradition through which a new head of the Catholic Church is elected. That starts May 7th. That's according to a Vatican spokesperson. They said that to NBC News today. Now, this announcement comes after Pope Francis was laid to rest Saturday in the ceremony that saw world leaders and hundreds of thousands of mourners descending upon the Vatican to pay their final respects. Francis died a week ago today, Easter Monday, at the age of 88. So that's a live look there at Vatican City. Below is home. That's Uptown Charlotte, upper 70s today. I have the fleece on. You might know.
I see that you have a fleece on. It's chilly in here.
It's chilly in here, but it was nice. It was fleece weather outside. Nice. I think so. My opinion, I think it was fleece weather. But the rest of the week is going to get warmer. It's going to get nice.
We can return to 80s, baby. 80s. Woo!
At that time of the year. It's that time of the year. It looks nice. So a great time. Like if you're at work and you need an excuse to go out and walk around, walk the dog, or go walk to lunch,
Yeah.
get some coffee. I mean, do it.
Soak it up while you can.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to
Lord
do that.
knows, before you know it, it's gonna be 90 in the close to triple digits, and we're all gonna be complaining.
Yeah.
So, I like the heat. But
I like the heat too.
Yeah.
So if you don't like the heat, it's a perfect day. It'll be a perfect week as we sort of usher in sort of that heat. All right. So we want to get back now to the Karen Read trial, which it looks like that shot may have froze.
Let's just give it a second to see if it
Okay.
jumps back. It's been kind of hiccuping all day.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, if we want to get to the forecast, we can.
forecast.
Yeah,
We've been
I'm
talking
gonna
about the
pop myself
forecast. Let's
back
talk
up on
about
camera.
forecast.
Yeah. So again, beautiful day. Meteorologist Chris Mulcahy gave his forecast earlier this morning. So and he also has some information about some of these strong storms that are moving throughout the Midwest right now. So let's take a listen into his forecast.
Let's talk a little bit more about this tornado threat. So we're going opposite spectrum from record cold to maybe a record outbreak for at least parts of Minnesota and parts of Wisconsin. Now, this area is not a stranger to tornadoes, but the way that this is setting up, it is very rare whenever you have this color. That is a 15% chance for tornadoes. That is extremely high, my friends, so keep that in mind. I'm showing you this just as a big weather story. Has nothing to do with our forecast. I'm letting you know everything's good. I'm up here talking about other weather because our forecast is so amazing, and I'll get to what you can expect here in a second. But what's really interesting is you might think, hey, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, well, it's technically right on the fringe of what we call the new tornado alley. So you probably noticed that we're actually reporting a lot more tornadoes in what's called Dixie Alley down here in Arkansas over to Alabama and Mississippi. But then it's right up here that actually we're seeing a lot more of the Midwest being dominated by some of these big time tornadoes and tornado outbreaks. So it's that one spot that eventually shifts its way further off towards the east. This is all a very strong cold front. But what's been happening recently is we're not getting the front to pass down towards the south. So it's still a form of atmospheric blocking that things still stay off towards the west, so more rain, more storms in that neck of the woods. Here's what's going to happen. Check it out. We actually have this front that's going to lift its way off towards the north. It's really not until Friday that a secondary cold front is going to push in. That's still going to allow for more moisture. It's going to feel more humid by Thursday, so I think our first chance for rain is going to be Thursday night into Friday morning, and then we'll have Friday anytime during the afternoon heading into the evening. Could be overnight. So there's a lot of question marks here, and it's not great news if you're planning on going to the Love and Life concert. But here's the deal. I'm seeing also a chance that we're dry most of it, and you just see some hit or miss showers and storms. We saw what happened in the most recent rain chances. A lot of them didn't really come to fruition, but the good news is at least we have that high pressure system that's going to be settling back in, so a nice dry weekend. So if we are going to see rain, I think it's mainly going to be a Friday event, so keep that in mind going forward. Guy Roofing 7-day forecast, 88 degrees is the top. So near 90 degrees on Wednesday. That'll be one of the warmer days we've had so far this year. And then heading into the weekend, back to the upper 70s. This is a great looking forecast, by the way, y'all. We officially are calling it May come Thursday, so we have a nice little mix between April and May-like temperatures.
As Brad likes to call it, Chamber of Commerce weather. So there you go. That's Chris's forecast. Let's take you back now live to the Boston area where the Karen Read retrial is underway.
An iPhone X or above is trying to find a face to use to unlock the device. If the camera is blocked, a record is made to say that it's within a pocket state. So if my phone's in my pocket, when somebody calls me, it tries to look for a face, it immediately recognizes that the camera's blocked, and it records pocket state. As soon as I take the phone out of my pocket or unblock the camera, it records a pocket state cleared event. So we know when the camera was covered up versus when it was uncovered, if at the time it was receiving a phone call or was being picked up.
Does an iPhone always record whether or not the camera was blocked or hidden or covered at the time a call comes in?
No. For example, if the device is already unlocked, then it won't make a recording to say that it was within a pocket state or a pocket state cleared. And if the device isn't blocked at all, so if I have the device on a desk in front of me, for example, and a call comes in, there'll be no record that says that it's in a pocket state or a pocket state cleared. It will only record a pocket state event if the camera's blocked, and it will only record a pocket state cleared event if the camera was blocked and now isn't.
So if I have my iPhone and I put it inside my jacket in the darkness and I get 30 calls, would all of those calls result in a reading of pocket state?
They'd all result in multiple readings of pocket state. The pocket state check is conducted more than once a second. I can't remember the exact number, but it's very frequent. And an average phone call from the start of the ring to when the device essentially hangs up, somewhere in the region of 500 checks. So if you had 10 phone calls, then you'll have 5,000 checks made that would all report pocket state.
Did you analyze John O'Keefe's phone on the evening, early morning hours through the next morning on January 29, 2022, in an attempt to identify where he was, what he was doing, and whether his phone was inside or outside?
That was my goal, yes.
And did you engage in that analysis, sir?
I did.
And in your efforts, did you write a report?
I did.
Did you write multiple reports on these separate issues?
I did.
And those reports were provided to everybody?
Yes.
In addition to the reports that you generated from your study, did you present or did you prepare a PowerPoint?
I did.
Does the PowerPoint outline some of those points?
It does.
At the end of the PowerPoint, do you go through a timeline accumulating many of these pieces of evidence together that show them in a chronological sequence?
I do.
And does that help capture the movement or non-movement of John O'Keefe's phone through that night?
I believe it does.
Nora, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm showing you a binder, sir. Could you look at it? Let me know if you recognize it.
Yes, this is the presentation that I created regarding John's phone.
And does it include some of the subject areas we just spoke about?
It does.
I'd move to introduce this as an exhibit, please.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. 39.
Thank you. With the court's permission, Mr. Whiffen, referring to Exhibit 39, I'd like you to walk us through John O'Keefe's phone on the evening of January 29th, 2022.
Thank you. So I start the presentation with location data. As I mentioned earlier, this comes from the cache.SQLite database, which is considered the most reliable location or the most reliable file for location data on an iOS device. Stores information whenever location information is requested. That could be through user interaction with the device using something like Waze. It could be background activity, just depending on what applications the user has open, what settings the user has chosen. It's constantly trying to find its location and recording it in this database, partly for the purposes of identifying frequent locations. At 12 minutes and 5 seconds after midnight, the device shows multiple location points at Washington Street around Forge Pond. What I've tried to show here, there's a kind of a gold dot in the middle, which would show the actual latitude, longitude information. And then the circle around it is what's considered the accuracy radius. The smaller the accuracy radius, obviously the more accurate the information is believed to be according to the device. But ultimately, if the device is anywhere within that circle, then iOS would consider it correct. It considers it an accurate record.
Mr. Whiffen, why are there multiple circles of location data for one point where Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone was?
So this wasn't a single point in time. This was multiple records at around 12 minutes and 5 seconds. No application was actually in use at this time requesting location information, but the device, for whatever reason, recorded multiple records with various degrees of accuracy. Typically, you would see accuracy start quite low and get better over time. which you may have seen on your own device when you open up the map application, and it may show your device close to where you are, but not perfectly where you are, and then wait a few seconds, and that information gets refined. Essentially, this is the same thing.
So low accuracy would be a wider circle, and higher accuracy would be a smaller circle?
Correct.
At this point, Mr. O'Keefe is not utilizing Waze on his phone?
Correct.
But location data is still being stored randomly on the phone from multiple different sources?
It is, yeah. Depends on the device itself.
In the top left-hand corner, it says 12:05. That's the time that this snapshot?
Yes.
Okay. And
in
then
this
below
case, approximate.
And below it's obviously the date?
Yes.
Okay, could you take us ahead, please?
Okay. There were multiple records between that last time and what's shown on screen now at 19 minutes and 33 seconds. But all of the records were sporadic and low accuracy with values of 1,000 meters or more. But around this time, around 19 minutes and 33 seconds after midnight, is when Waze was actually brought on screen. Waze starts to ask for high accuracy data, so we see the accuracy immediately start to improve. So again, we see relatively low accuracy data to begin, and then over the next few seconds it begins to refine itself until it gets down to a 5-meter accuracy records as the device continues up here. We'll highlight that there's a cluster of records here as the device came to either a slow or a stop. Momentarily, multiple records were created, and then the device continued driving up Denham Street.
Mr. Whiffen, below the time, 12/19/33, in the date, talks about the average accuracy.
Yes.
And that's in meters?
That's in meters. So again, the records that are shown at the bottom here are around 55 meters. The records shown at the top are around 5 meters.
Is it typical in Waze that once it locks in, the range is around 5 meters?
Typically, yes. That would be the goal.
You also mentioned the average speed. Where do you learn the speed from? Where does that data come from?
The database, the Cache SQLite database also calculates the average speed between two data points, and also the bearing or the direction of travel between those 2 points. So the average speed that's shown here on the left is approximately the average of all of the records that are shown on this map at the time. And each of these map points has a directional arrow that points in the direction that the database recorded the device was traveling in.
When you look at this information generated because of the usage of Waze, and you can see both the accuracy and the speed, with the Waze information at its most accurate, can you actually tell whether the vehicle is moving or whether it stops?
Yeah, based on the speed and the location and the timestamps, you can determine whether the device is moving or stopped.
Okay, thank you.
Also important to, I think, point out here, in terms of knowing how reliable this location information is, I typically look at something along the lines of, does the location think it's accurate? In this case, 5 meters, so yes. Does it make sense? Like, it's on the road, it's on the correct side of the road. So again, it kind of makes sense. It fits the pattern of the road. The cadence and the speed are, what you would expect for this road, like traveling at 20 to 30 miles an hour up here seems quite reasonable. So all of these factors taken together increase my confidence that this would be reliable location data. Moving to the next slide, between 20 minutes and 19 seconds and 21 minutes and 58 seconds after midnight, the device starts on the left side, on the right side at Denham Street, drives up and turns left onto Maplecroft Road. Again, we see that all of these location points match the pattern of the road layout. They all have a consistent cadence, a consistent speed, traveling at between 10 and 20 miles an hour. And we see a cluster of records here, which is around a stop sign. So again, it indicates how reliable the data is, because the location, the location data that's recorded recognize the vehicle slow, come to a stop, and then continue after the stop sign.
Is Maplecroft Road in Canton?
Yes. At the end of Maplecroft Road, the device turned left onto Oakdale Road and continued heading down there.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right now, you're watching live as the Karen Reed trial is underway. Again, we've been following the story since the very beginning. The second week of that testimony. It looks that shot keeps going in and out. Just want to be patient here. Yeah. Wait a second to see if it pops back in. Let's do the rest of the box. Yeah. So on the top right is a live look at Vatican City. Now, Cardinals will gather for conclave. This is a centuries-old tradition through which a new head of the Catholic Church is elected starting May 7th. Now, Vatican spokesperson, that's what they told NBC this morning. The announcement comes after Pope Francis was laid to rest Saturday in a ceremony that saw world leaders and hundreds of thousands of mourners descend upon the Vatican to pay their respects. Pope Francis died exactly a week ago on Easter Monday at the age of 88. Bottom right, that is a live look at Uptown Charlotte. Oh, it is a beautiful day. It's going to be a beautiful week. So enjoy. Chris gave us a forecast. Yeah, if you're not a fan of hot weather, this one is for you. This week is for you.
Yeah. It's nice. It's nice weather. It's nice. Maybe a little cool in the morning. Then it gets warmer during the day.
You know, you can get away with a fleece.
Yep.
So yeah.
You got a fleece on right now.
I got a fleece on. It's very chilly in the studio. So yeah, enjoy the day. Enjoy the weather. So we're going to try to get back out to the Karen Reed testimony that's underway. Somebody is on the stand. Again, this is second week of the Karen Reed trial in the Boston area. So let's listen into what's happening right now.
Per slide. So at 24 minutes and 20 seconds, we see the device is already on Fairview Road. Accuracy of 5 meters, traveling at 14.8 meters and heading south. 24 minutes and 21 seconds is now at 16.2 meters, but it's still highly accurate information. 24 minutes and 22 seconds, traveling at 18.3 miles an hour. 24 minutes and 23 seconds, traveling at 16.9. 24 minutes and 24 seconds after midnight, traveling at 16.9. 24 minutes and 25 seconds, traveling at 16.6. 24 minutes and 26 seconds, traveling at 17. 24 minutes, 27 seconds, traveling at 15.9 miles an hour. 24 minutes and 28 seconds, traveling at 14.5 miles an hour, at which point it's approximately outside number 34, around the driveway area. 24 minutes and 29 seconds, traveling at 12.1 miles an hour. 24 minutes and 30 seconds, traveling at 11.5. 24 minutes and 31 seconds, traveling at 10.4. 24 minutes and 32 seconds, traveling at 8.9. 24 minutes and 33 seconds, traveling at 7. 24 minutes, 34 seconds, traveling at 5.2. 24 minutes and 35 seconds, traveling at 3.5. 24 minutes and 36 seconds, traveling at 3.2 miles an hour. And at 24 minutes and 37 seconds, traveling at 1.4 miles an hour. Finally, the device comes to a complete stop at 24 minutes and 38 seconds. I'll say from the testing that I've done related to the speed, it may not be 100% accurate, but it's a very good indicator of the speed in general. So if it says it was traveling at 10 miles an hour, it would have been traveling at somewhere between 9.5 and 10.5 on average.
Mr. Whiffen, you just showed us the travel of Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone around 12:24 to 12:24:38 on January 29, 2022, and you said at 12:24:38 it came to a complete stop.
Yes.
Before that complete stop, was the car continuously moving at some speed?
Yes, this is the first record that shows 0 miles per hour or 0 meters per second. Prior to this, there was always a record that showed some level of speed.
If you look at number 34 on that chalk, if you can highlight it, please. Okay. If the driveway were at the right side, the top side of the house,
yes.
Does your studies indicate that the vehicle, or at least the phone, traveled past the driveway before it stopped?
Objection, Your Honor.
Ask it non-leading, please.
Did this car, or the phone that was in the car, ever stop at the driveway of that address?
No, according to the location and the speed data from the device, by the time it was approximately the driveway, the phone reports it was still traveling at around 15.9 miles an hour.
Have you ever seen a photograph of that address?
I have.
You have or have not?
I have.
You have. And in that address, do you see on the far left corner of that address, the yard, there's a flagpole?
Yes.
Where this car stops, or this phone stops at 12:24:33, how close is the phone to that flagpole?
I believe very close.
And do you ever see the car or the phone stop anywhere near that driveway?
No.
Please continue.
Between 24 minutes and 39 seconds and 25 minutes and 8 seconds, there were a cluster of more records, all showing 5-meter accuracy, but no movement. Although the center point does move around a little bit, you could interpret this as movement, but because all of the radiuses or radii overlap, there's also a good chance that there's no movement that actually occurred here. This is just the device as it's trying to refine its location. At 25 minutes and 30 seconds, we see a relatively significant change where the accuracy drops to 34 meters. We do see a course or a bearing that shows that the device reported it was heading west. But again, this accuracy radius includes the previous locations anyway. So it's difficult to differentiate between actual movement based on this location data or just on the fact that the accuracy reduced, the center point shifted because of that accuracy change, and therefore a bearing was attributed to it when it shouldn't have been.
If I could ask you some questions about the chalk on that indicates 25 minutes, 30 seconds, so 12:25:30. The circles become larger.
Correct.
Is Waze still being used, or has Waze been stopped?
No, Waze has been closed at this point for about 40 or 50 seconds.
For how long, sir?
About 40 or 50 seconds.
Okay. This location data, or this circle, the perimeter, that's not coming from the Waze application anymore?
No, the location data never came from the Waze application. Waze was requesting location data. iOS is responding to that request, and as part of that response,
All right. That shot, again, keeps freezing out on that Karen retrial. We'll get to that this afternoon, maybe, depending on what's happening in that trial. But for right now, we want to switch gears. We want to come back home because the Meg Mile is happening soon. It's a chance to see how fast you can run a mile.
How fast can you run a mile?
I can do 8:30, 8:40,
Yeah.
8:30. I don't really.
You don't run for speed, you run for longevity, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of hard to kind of gauge that, but it's a popular event. It's a big event.
Big event.
It's happening actually May 10th.
Yes.
At Memorial Stadium.
Yep.
So you might see me out there.
Maybe.
I was about to call Miles Harris.
Yes.
Miles and Mile is very tricky saying that. So Miles Harris is covering the Mech Mile that's happening soon. He was on the morning stream this morning. Let's take a listen in.
Well, this weekend, runners here in the Queen City are going to lace up their shoes for a good cause. The second annual Mech Mile event returns with a special focus on giving back to the community, specifically to those in Western North Carolina.
WCNC Charlotte's Miles Harris joins us live this morning. So, Miles, what can we expect this year?
Well, you can expect something for everybody here at Ben and Lisa. And whether you're walking or running with this year's Mech Mile, it's really giving participants a chance to really bringing this community together and in a unique way.
This year marks the second time Charlotte has hosted the Mech Mile at Memorial Stadium, and the community fitness event offering more to Charlotte than ever before.
So it's really built for everyone in the community to come out and enjoy.
Miller Yoho with the Charlotte Sports Foundation says that they've evolved the run and expanded the event into a run for everyone.
We really focused on creating a spectator atmosphere, and what people can do is now come out, see professional athletes run the course they ran.
Beyond the chance to see professional runners compete for $20,000, the Mech Mile race